The sun on planet Vedra was not just hot, it was cruel. It burned down on the sand like a giant fire above the sky. Even machines would overheat after a few hours. Jace, a quiet human living at the edge of the desert, was fixing a broken solar panel when he saw something strange near the gates of his junkyard. Two shapes crawling on the ground, slowly coming closer. He thought it was just a mirage heat playing tricks on his eyes. But as they moved closer, he realized it was real. An alien woman and a small child were dragging themselves across the sand. Their skin was dry, lips cracked, eyes sunken from thirst. The woman looked up, tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. She collapsed at his feet. Her arms still wrapped around her child. Jace's heart thumped hard in his chest. He hadn't seen anyone this far out in weeks. He looked around, no pursuers in sight. No signs of a trap, just suffering, real and raw. He rushed to them, pulling them under the shade of a half-broken satellite dish. The child was barely breathing, the woman worse. He ran inside, grabbed his last bottle of water. Not much, but enough. He lifted the bottle to the woman's lips, and she drank like it was life itself. Then she gently poured some into her child's mouth. Shaking the whole time, Jace could see tears in her alien eye, silver tears, sparkling in the light. "Please," she whispered. "Don't send us back." Jace didn't ask questions. Not yet. He helped carry them inside, laid them on a soft old blanket near his cooling unit. They needed rest, water, and food, but mostly, they needed safety, as Jace gave the child a nutrient bar. A tiny sensor blinked on his wall. Motion alarm, tripwires, someone had triggered a tracker a mile away. Jace's mind raced. He checked the feed. Saw dust rising in the distance, small speeder bikes, fast and armed. "Someone's looking for her," he whispered. The woman's eyes opened weakly, as if she heard him. "I stole water from them," she said, voice thin like air. "They marked me and my daughter as thieves." Jace frowned. "You stole water." She nodded. "They control the springs. Even the air wells. They let children die if the parents don't obey." Jace stood still, thinking he didn't want trouble, didn't want enemies. But something in that child's face, soft, silent, trust cut into his soul. He remembered his own daughter, years ago, gone too young, and just like that, he made his choice. "They're not gonna take you," he said firmly. The woman stared at him like she didn't believe him. Ch. But Jace had already locked the doors and started powering up his defenses. Outside, dust clouds got closer, the engines louder, inside. Jace began hiding them under the floorboard hatch he used for spare parts. "Stay quiet," he whispered, "no matter what happens." He loaded his old rifle, not meant for war, but it would send a message. Then he walked out to the gate, just as the first bike came into view. 4 riders, dressed in dark red, with cruel masks and glowing spears. One of them pointed at Jace. "We're looking for a female and a child, stolen water from scorched blood." Jace didn't blink. "Haven't seen anyone?" The rider's eyes narrowed. "Funny, our sensor pinged right here." Jace shrugged. "Probably a bird." "Or a lizard." The lead rider leaned closer. "You? Hiding something, human?" Jace held the rifle loose in his hands. "Just fixing machines, unless you want something fixed." The rider gave him one last look, then spat on the sand. "Next time we come, we search," he growled. "No mercy." And then they rode off, engines roaring like beasts. Jace waited until the dust disappeared, then went back inside. The woman was trembling, holding her child tight. "You could have given us away," she whispered. Jace shook his head. "I've lost a daughter before. Not again." She looked at him, her eyes filled with something more than fear, maybe hope, maybe confusion. "Why would a human help us?" she asked. Jace looked at the child, who is now asleep, her small hand clutching his old scarf. "Because someone has to," he said, his voice calm but firm. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. He had made enemies, now real ones, and they would be back. And next time, they wouldn't just knock, the sun rose again over the desert, hot and angry. But inside Jace's junkyard, the world felt calm. The alien woman slept beside her child. Both safe for the first time in days, Jace was in his workroom, staring at his old communication device. He hadn't used it in years, not since the war. But now, something told him he might need help soon as he checked the perimeter drones. A knock echoed from the outer gate. Not banging, not threats, just a slow, cold knock. He walked to the screen and saw his neighbor, old Grint, standing outside with a nervous look. Jace opened the gate just a little. "What's going on?" Grint didn't waste time. "You fed them, didn't you?" Jace froze. "Fed who?" "The blue-skinned girl and her kid," Grint said, voice trembling. "You gave them water." Jace stepped out, closed the gate behind him. "Why do you care?" Grint looked around, whispering fast, "Because Scorch Blood knows." "Jace, they're not guessing anymore. They're sure it was you." Jace's jaw tightened. "How?" "Some fool in town saw you sneak back from the market last night, carrying meds," Grint said. "They told Coral Scout." Jace cursed under his breath. He should have been more careful. Should have known that in a desert town, nothing stayed secret for long. Grint leaned in close. "You don't understand. They consider water there's every drop, every grain of salt she stole from them. That makes her a thief, and helping her makes you worse." Jace's eyes were calm, but there was fire behind them. "She's a mother," he said, "and the kid." "The kid just wanted to live." Grint sighed. "I get it. I do. But Coral doesn't care. He sent out a message this morning to all traders. Return the girl or we burn the town." Jace looked past him, toward the sky, where a single black dot circled in the air. A drone scorched Blood's eyes in the sky. Back inside, the woman was sitting up now, watching the dusty light slip through broken window blinds. Her child played quietly, stacking old bolts and nuts like toys. Jace sat beside her, poured her a small cup of water. She drank slowly this time. With gratitude in her eyes, "You shouldn't have done this," she said. "They'll kill you." Jace smiled faintly. "They might try." She touched her child's head. "We can run again." "You don't have to suffer for us." Jace shook his head. "I've been alone in this place too long. I was just fixing machines, fixing walls. Now I get to fix something that matters." That night, Jace walked the outer line of his junkyard, checking traps, reinforcing weak spots. He rigged old car batteries into shock panels, placed mines near the side walls. If Scorched Blood came, they wouldn't find a weak human. They'd find a war zone. But in the middle of it all, he also found something strange. He watched the alien child sleep, holding an old metal gear like a teddy bear, and for the first time in years, Jace felt like he wasn't just protecting strangers, he was protecting family. At midnight, a package flew over the wall and landed near his door, a smooth metal cube with blinking lights. Jace picked it up carefully, scanned it. It was a message pod. He tapped it once, and a small hologram appeared in the air. Coral's face appeared, with red eyes and a cruel smile. "You've made your choice, human," the voice growled. "You think kindness will save you? You fed her, protected her, stole back what belongs to us. Now, blood will pay for water." The hologram faded. The pot exploded into smoke. Jace didn't flinch, didn't move. He just looked at the stars, then at the sleeping woman and her child, and quietly said, "Then let them come." The next morning, Jace stepped outside and stopped cold. On the metal wall of his junkyard, right beside the main gate, a bright red X had been painted during the night. Not just painted, was marked with acid, the metal still hissing softly in the heat. It was the gang's mark. Everyone in the desert knew what it meant. It wasn't just a warning, it was a countdown. Jace stared at it for a long moment, then walked back inside. The alien woman, her name was Raylo, was cooking a thin soup using old ration packs. Her daughter Sia sat near her, drawing shapes in the dust with a stick. Jace didn't want to scare them, but Rayla saw the tension in his shoulders. "What is it?" she asked. "They marked us," Jace said, voice quiet but sharp. "They're coming soon." Rayla didn't cry, didn't panic. She just looked at her child, then nodded slowly. "I'll leave," she said. "I can go now." "Maybe they'll spare you." Jace slammed his wrench on the table, not in anger but frustration. "You walk into that desert, you both die," he said. "That's not an option." He grabbed a tablet from the shelf and opened the defense map. The junkyard was big, full of old ships, wrecked cargo units, fuel cells, and hidden tunnels. Jace started upgrading everything. He pulled out an old drone swarm kit, rewired it with better tracking. He added spikes to the walls, heat traps near the gate, and a smoke grid across the middle yard. Every broken robot became a watchman. Every junk pile became a fortress. Rayla watched him, amazed. "You were a soldier," she said softly. Jace didn't look up. "I was a fixer. During the Earth-Mars border wars, I built things to survive." I never stopped. Later that day, they heard a buzzing in the sky. A messenger drone hovered above the junkyard, then dropped a small box. Jace caught it carefully, opened it, and saw what was inside, a single burnt toy. A warning that night, the town stayed silent. Shops closed early. Lights dimmed, even the local guards didn't patrol near Jace's side of the desert anymore. People whispered his name in fear now, not respect, but he didn't care. He had made his choice. And he would not turn back. Around midnight, Rayla came to him with a strange object. A small, glowing stone from her planet. It shimmered like blue fire, pulsing with warmth. "This is a shield crystal," she said. "It's weak now. But if you channel enough energy into it, it can protect one person." Jace took it gently, then placed it around Sia's neck. The little girl looked up at him, confused, but smiled. He smiled back, though his heart was heavy. She reminded him too much of his own daughter. Long gone, in the morning, Jace found something new. Another red X, but this time there were numbers under it. 3 scratched deep into the metal. 3 days. That's how long he had. He sent a signal to his old war contact, a woman named Captain Vea. The message was short: "Need support." Code red dust. He didn't know if she'd come. Didn't even know if she was still alive, but it was the only backup he could hope for. Rayla helped him set traps. Even though she was still weak, she moved through the junkyard like someone who had run her whole life but never fought. "This time," she said, "I don't want to run." Jace looked at her, surprised. Something inside her had changed. Fear was still there, but now there was fire too. On the second night, Jace caught one of the gang's scouts sneaking through the north side. He didn't kill him, just sent him back with a shattered hand and a message. "Tell your boss I'm not afraid," he said. "Tell him this junkyard bites back." Now, the countdown had begun. 3 days until the desert storm of blades and fire would come crashing down. 3 lives, 1 junkyard, and a war built from kindness. Jace didn't sleep, didn't eat, he just worked, prepared, and waited. Because when the Blood Gang came for what they thought was theirs, he would be ready. The sun fell like fire on the junkyard as the 4th day began. The number on the red X had vanished now, replaced by silence. Jace stood on his roof, looking out over the sand. The air was too still, too quiet. He knew what that meant. This was the calm before the storm. He had spent 3 days without sleep, turning every broken robot, every rusted engine, and every fuel cell into a weapon. His junkyard wasn't just a home anymore, it was a battlefield. And he was ready. Inside, Rayla held her daughter close. They sat in a small corner bunker made of scrap metal and old military plating. She had wanted to leave again, to run. But Jace had placed his hand on her shoulder and simply said, "No more running," and somehow, that gave her the strength to stay. By mid-afternoon, the sand began to move. Jace looked through his cracked binoculars. 10 speeder bikes, dark red, riding fast across the desert like a pack of wolves. Scorched blood had come, and they had brought death with them. He took a deep breath and activated his outer defenses. Rusty drones lifted from corners of the yard, shaky but armed. Turrets unfolded from broken cargo shells, sparking but ready to fire. Jace picked up his plasma launcher heavy, unstable, and hand-built. It buzzed in his grip like a live wire as the first bikes reached the junkyard. A voice called out through a speaker. "Give us the girl, and we let you crawl away." Jace didn't answer. Instead, he pulled a lever, and one of the ground plates exploded beneath the front speeder. The bike flipped into the air, crashing down in flames. That was the signal. The others charged in without warning. The battle began. Blaster fire tore through the walls. Drones dropped like flies, but took riders with them. Jace fired his plasma launcher. One hit vaporized a metal beam near the enemy, sending shards flying into their armor. But they were trained killers, moving fast, surrounding him like wild animals. One rider leaped over the fence, landing inside the yard with a blade in hand. Jace swung a pipe hard, smashing the alien's helmet, knocking him out cold, but another shot hit Jace in the leg. He screamed, dropped behind a wall, and dragged himself back inside. Rayla rushed to him, blood soaking his pants. "I'll hold them off," she said, picking up a shock rifle from the floor. Jace grabbed her arm. "No, you, protect the kid." She looked into his eyes, then nodded and ran to shield Sia with her body. Jace crawled to a control panel and slammed his hand down on the big red button. A blast shield dropped across the roof, and a second layer of metal spikes rose from the ground. The enemy now had to fight through burning oil, smoke, and automated saw blades. One by one, they fell burned, sliced, or stunned by shock fields. But still, they kept coming. The last four surrounded the main cabin, shouting, "We'll burn it all if you don't give her up." Jace pushed himself up with a metal rod. Limping, he walked outside, smoke rising behind him. Face covered in blood and dust, he held the plasma launcher over his shoulder like it weighed nothing. "You want her?" he shouted. "Then come and take her." The warriors laughed, thinking he was bluffing. But Jace wasn't bluffing. He was done being quiet. He pulled the trigger. The launcher fired one final blast, unstable, violent, burning the air itself. It missed the rider's butt, hit a fuel cell behind them. The explosion was massive, shaking the junkyard like an earthquake. Two bikes flew into the air and landed in pieces. The remaining warrior stepped forward alone, his armor burned, face exposed, fury in his eyes. He pointed his weapon at the cabin, at Sia, and Jace was too far away to stop him. That's when the child cried, loud and terrified, and the sky above them roared. The cry of the child echoed through the burning junkyard, and above, the sky split open with thunder, not from weather, but from engines. A shadow fell over the battlefield, wide and sharp-edged. A ship, old but powerful, dropped from the clouds like a hammer from the gods. Its wings were scarred from old wars, its cannons still glowing hot from orbit. The last scorched blood warrior froze, his weapon still aimed at the child. Then a blast struck near his feet, throwing him back into the dust. The ship hovered above, and from its belly came a single figure, a woman in dark armor. Carrying a heavy rifle and walking like the war never ended, Jace looked up from the ground. His leg bleeding, his arm shaking. He recognized her at once, Captain Via, his old squad leader from the Mars border siege. She hadn't aged a day, but her eyes were colder, sharper, and full of fury. She stepped past him without a word and raised her gun at the gang's last warrior. "You point a weapon at a child?" she said calmly. "Then you die as a coward." One shot clean, final, and the warrior fell without a sound. Silence took over the battlefield. Even the fires seemed to die down out of respect. Rayla stepped out, holding Sia in her arms, her eyes wide with disbelief, her hands still trembling. Jace pushed himself up on one knee, groaning. "You got my signal?" Vea finally looked at him, smirked, and said, "Took me a while to dig this old ship out of the scrapyard." Jace chuckled, then winced in pain. Vea called in her medic drone, which floated over and began treating his leg. "You really went all in for them," she said, nodding toward Rayla and her child. Jace didn't look at them. He didn't need to. "I couldn't let them die thirsty," he said. "Not again." Rayla walked over, her voice shaking. "Why did you come for us?" Vea glanced at Jace, then said, "Because this idiot saved my life once, and because no mother and child should be hunted for stealing water." She turned and looked at the smoldering bodies of the fallen gang members. "But this isn't over," she said. "You just took down one hunting group. The Scorch Blood Gang has hundreds across the dunes. If they find out a human protected a dry one, they'll come with tanks next time." Jace nodded. "Then we prepare." Vea raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "You've got 2 refugees, 1 half-broken junkyard, and a limp." Jace smiled. "And a warship now." That night, they buried the fallen gang or not, fire or not. Death had a silence that needed respect. Rayla lit candles in her tradition, speaking a soft prayer in her language. Sia placed pebbles near each flame, 3 for peace, 2 for courage, 1 for memory. Jace didn't understand the meaning, but he felt it deep in his chest. Later, as the stars returned to the sky, Rayla sat beside Jace. Her voice was low. "You could have let us die in the sand, but instead, you fought. You bled. Why?" Jace didn't answer right away. He watched Sia sleep with a faint smile on her face, holding a piece of his torn scarf. "She reminded me of someone," he said quietly. "My daughter. She was about the same age when I lost her." Rayla reached out, placing her hand over his. "No one has ever fought for us like this," she whispered. "Not even our own kind. You're not just a fixer. Jace, your hope." He didn't respond. Didn't know how to, but in that moment, with the junkyard still smoking, with his wounds still fresh, he didn't feel broken anymore. He felt whole, but far beyond the horizon. Red lights began to flicker again. Another group had heard the news, and they were coming. 3 days passed since the battle in the junkyard. Smoke no longer rose from the ground, but the tension stayed. The scent of burned oil still hung in the air. Jace could walk now, though his leg was stiff. The wounds on his body were healing, but the war in his mind had just begun. Captain Vea remained in orbit, patrolling in her patched-up warship. She had warned Jace before she left. "This peace is not peace," she said. "It's just the quiet before something worse." Jace knew she was right. He could feel it in the way the wind had changed. Rayla spent her time cleaning the yard, planting water vines near the back wall. They grew slowly, drinking moisture from the air. Sia followed her everywhere. Laughing more now, the child smiled when she saw sunlight. But the smile vanished when shadows moved too quickly. Jace was in the watchtower when he saw it. Dust again. Far away, but fast. Too fast to be traitors. Too straight to be wanderers. He tapped the alarm panel, and a low hum echoed through the junkyard. Rayla heard it and froze. She picked up Sia and rushed into the hidden chamber beneath the floor, the place Jace had built for one reason: safety, when everything else failed. Jace stood at the top, holding his repaired plasma rifle. Through the scope, he counted 6 speeders this time. They weren't scorched blood colors, no red, no gang signs. These were bounty hunters. Private muscle hired by someone with credits and a reason to see him fall. One of the riders stopped just outside the fence and shouted, "We're not here for you, human," the voice said. Cold and smooth, "Give us the girl and the child, we'll leave you alive." Jace didn't even answer. He simply raised the barrel of his weapon and fired. The warning shot hit the sand between the rider's feet. The message was clear: leave or die. The hunters opened fire without a word, but Jace was ready. Turrets burst from the walls, smoke bombs dropped from the roof. He moved like a shadow, limping, bleeding again but focused. 2 of the attackers fell fast, caught in traps and fire, inside the chamber. Sia began to cry. Her soft whimper echoed through the vents. Rayla hugged her tight, but her own hands were shaking. "She's scared," she whispered. She can feel death outside. Suddenly, the door above them rattled. One of the hunters had broken through. Rayla picked up a sharp tool, ready to defend her child. But the man didn't see them yet. He was searching, gun ready. Steps slow. Sia cried louder. And then something strange happened. The ground shook. The ceiling lights flickered, and above, the sky roared again. But it wasn't Captain Vea this time. It was something else. A massive carrier ship descended, dulled gold-marked, and humming with alien tech. It had no visible weapons, yet the hunters stopped in fear because they recognized the symbol on its wings, the Kalari Matrons. An ancient alien order known for protecting lost mothers and children. They were rare, almost mythical. Some said they vanished centuries ago. But now, one had come for Rayla and Sia. The lead hunter backed away, panic in his eyes. "We were not told they had protection from the Cagliari," he shouted. He turned to run, but the ship opened midair and released a sonic pulse. The hunters dropped, one by one, unconscious, from the glowing ramp of the ship. A tall alien figure walked out. A woman dressed in gold and blue, eyes shining like moons. She walked through the smoke, untouched by the heat, and stopped in front of Jace. "You protected one of ours," she said, her voice echoing like song. "You gave water when others gave death. For that, we offer you our blessing." Jace didn't speak, just nodded, too exhausted to understand the weight of her words. She turned toward the chamber and waited. Rayla stepped out, holding Sia, tears in her eyes. The Kalari woman bowed her head. "You are safe now, sister. You were never meant to walk alone." Rayla looked at Jace, as if asking what to do. He smiled, weak but proud. "Go," he said softly. "Take her where no one can ever hurt her again." And just like that, the girl he saved from the sand walked into the stars. The stars had swallowed the ship carrying Rayla and Sia. And the desert was quiet again. Jace stood in the middle of his junkyard. The ground still warm from fire and blood. He could still feel the echo of the girl's tiny arms around his neck. The sound of her crying had faded, but the memory would never leave. His home was broken. Walls bent, drones destroyed, and the fence full of holes. But strangely, Jace didn't feel weak or defeated. He felt proud. He had stood between death and life, and he had chosen life. Captain Vea returned the next morning, landing with dust and engine noise. She stepped down from her ship, chewing on a protein bar like nothing had happened. "You still alive?" she asked with a smirk. Jace raised an eyebrow. Barely Vea looked around the place and whistled. "This isn't a junkyard anymore. It's a legend." They spent the day fixing things together like the old days, two war-broken humans using bolts, fire, sweat to hold something together. She offered him a ride back to Earth. He shook his head. "I think I've got work to do here," he said. "Besides, someone's got to rebuild this place." The town nearby slowly started talking again. At first, they kept their distance. Then, one by one, people came. A mechanic offered scrap parts. A trader dropped off clean water canisters. Even Grint, his paranoid neighbor, arrived with a fresh solar panel and 2 jars of dried fruit. Nobody said sorry, but they didn't have to. Their silence had spoken during the fight, but now their actions spoke louder. Children from the town began visiting, asking about the traps, the flying drones, the big explosion. Jace told them stories not just about the battle, but about Rayla. He told them how she risked her life for her daughter, and how a small girl smiled for the first time after finding shade. One day, as he sat rebuilding the west wall, he noticed something strange. A patch of green, a small water vine, had survived the battle. It had grown around a piece of scrap metal, curling up like it was reaching for the sky. Jace knelt beside it, touched the soft leaf. "She left this," he whispered. "She planted hope." He built a small fence around the vine, not to protect it, but to honor it, and above it he welded a simple sign made from melted speeder parts. It read, "Here, water was given freely, weeks passed." The junkyard became more than a home again. It became a place people came to for safety, help, and sometimes healing. Other dry ones began arriving, mothers and children who had run from gangs, warlords, or the burning sands. Jace didn't turn them away. He gave them tools, space, food, and water. No questions, just care. They called him the Desert Fixer. Some whispered that he had a heart made of solar gold. Others said he was protected by ancient alien spirits. But Jace didn't care about names or stories. He just worked, one bolt at a time, one evening. While adjusting a fence beam, a small girl tugged on his coat. He turned and saw eyes like silver, wide and full of curiosity. She held up a small drawing to figures, one tall, one small, standing under stars. He took the drawing gently, and his throat tightened. The figure on the left had a scarf, the same scarf Sia used to hold. Jace smiled, his eyes moist. "Thank you," he whispered. The girl smiled back and ran off. That night, he sat on the roof, looking at the stars. He didn't know where Rayla and Sia were now, but he hoped they were safe. He hoped they were laughing, dancing, and drinking clean water with no fear. And if they ever came back, he'd be here. Same junkyard, same tools, same old fixer. But this time, with a garden of water vines and a home built from ashes.